Welcome to Terms of Deployment, the process of evaluating Hatchbox, Fly.io, and Render for developers. I have a confession to make. Despite the title, which is inspired by both the novel and the movie, Terms of Endearment, there is no connection between those media and this talk at all. So if you're a Deborah Winger fan or Shirley MacLaine, if you leave, I won't be mad. So today we're going to talk a little bit about, I think I loaded the wrong slides. Hold on. There we go. All right. So today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the new app hosting platforms that have come online for Rails developers in the past little bit. Going to introduce you to who I am and why I'm even bothering to give this talk. We're going to talk about the contenders a little bit, do a little dance battle, and then we're going to talk about the different levers that you can pull to make your decision for yourself, whether you work for an agency or a digital product studio or you're a freelancer. Hopefully we're going to give you the tools to help you make your decision on which platform you want to use. And then we'll just do a little recap at the end with some tools to help you move forward. So first of all, who am I? I'm Jordan Burke. I'm a senior software developer at Headway, a digital product studio based in Green Bay. And you know it's me because I'm wearing the same jacket in the picture. I actually only have one jacket and a couple of hoodies. I'm a recovering technical founder that's learned a lot of things the hard way. My first startup was a healthcare IT startup. So I learned how to build a HIPAA-compliant infrastructure on AWS in 2013. Not fun. I've helped run Rails Girls events and Rails Bridge events and taught some Intro to Rails courses, and I heavily relied on Heroku's free tier to teach people how to put their Rails app online. I love to build things, whether it's Legos, my garden, software, what have you. I may have a little bit of a problem. This is just a small part of my collection. Don't even get me started on my Star Wars tabletop miniature collection. But let's talk a little bit about why we're here. So first off, how many of you work with clients and recommend hosting solutions or are on small teams and responsible for those decisions? Okay, so a couple of you should get something out of this, hopefully. At Headway, we work with larger clients that have their own infrastructure teams, and this talk isn't necessarily for those clients, so if you're watching, you can tune out. The smaller clients that we work with are just getting started or don't have a lot of technical expertise in-house, and this talk is definitely for them. So what really spurred the genesis of this talk is, as you may have heard, in late August of 2022, Heroku announced that they were discontinuing their free tier. Like you, I'm sure this threatened the livelihood of 20 apps that you had put on Heroku and completely forgot about for 5 to 7 years. I mean, how dare they? I'm kidding, of course, but it shook a lot of things up. And even though nothing was really changing for our clients, we still use Heroku for a couple of our clients. It prompted us to look at some alternatives. And there were a lot of alternatives that were popping up out there. And it made us ask the question at Headway, are we serving our clients' best interests? And can we serve them better? So we decided to explore some new options with internal products and some client projects that the client trusted us to be good steward of their resources, their budget, their time. We deployed some client projects to Hatchbox, Fly, and Render. And we wanted to determine what each platform's quirks and eccentricities were so that we could make informed decisions in the future. Now you may ask, why not Elastic Beanstalk? Why not MRSK? Why not X? And these were the 3 platforms that we felt closest matched our needs and our clients' needs at the time. Evil Martians just released a blog post last night about MRSK. So if you come back in If I go to RubyConf in November, I'll probably add that to the list. But there are a number of platforms out there that can serve your clients' needs. These are just the 3 that really works for us. So let's talk about the contenders that we brought to this dance-off. How many of y'all have used Hatchbox? I would expect that. How many of y'all have used Fly? Okay, a couple hands. How many of y'all have used Render? Okay, a couple more hands, all right. So we've used all 3 platforms in some fashion at Headway, and I've tried to remain objective in this overview, but we're all human. It's like Star Wars in a way. I'm gonna have some favorites, but I love all of them. So just try to keep that in mind. Don't call me out. Well, you can call me out, it's fine. We'll start with Hatchbox. Disclaimer, this is all my interpretation of it. Chris sitting right here has nothing to do with what I'm about to say. It's by Rails devs for Rails devs, and lives by the principle of convention over configuration. You can bring your own backend servers, not from anywhere, but the usual suspects: AWS, DigitalOcean, Linode, Vultr. So you've got some options there. We work with a lot of startup companies, so one of the things we like to recommend is that they sign up for AWS Activate, get $1,000 in free credits from AWS, and then back that up with Hatchbox, so they've got a little bit of a head start with that. Clearly, Hatchbox is from the folks at Go Rails, so that you know they're scratching their own itch with it. Some considerations: it's opinionated and Rails only, as of right now. Sort of. Okay. So if you're trying to do something outside the conventions, you definitely can, but you're going to have to do it yourself. There's nothing on Hatchbox that prevents you from doing whatever you want on your servers. So, moving on to Fly. Fly is really nifty in that it scales where your users are. And there's a free tier with it. So, but if you have your app go viral in South America, your app can scale instances there. If you have lots of worldwide traffic at very specific times of day, Fly helps you keep up with the ebb and flow of your users. Fly's instances are bare metal machines, so you can configure them with whatever your deploy process is. Using the Toml configuration files, you can deploy Docker files with it. And if you run into issues, posting on either their community board or on Reddit gets you a response super fast, sometimes even from their CEO. The number of times I've been on Reddit and I've seen their CEO pop into a thread just to answer a question is astonishing to me. Fly likes the soft launch features into their CLI, so you might have to dig around to figure out what you're doing. And while they offer database instances, they specifically and almost gleefully maintain that they are an app platform. So you might want to host your DB elsewhere if you want better management tools. I like their line in the sand. I respect it. It's just a consideration for you. All right, Render. So Render is the platform I've least experimented with, but I think there's a lot of upside there. It has probably the fastest setup I've ever seen. I took one of the Jumpstart free template Rails apps, put it on Render in about 5 minutes. Like just from getting it to git push. It's also the cheapest I've found. I completely forgot about SetApp for about a month and got a bill for $14, so that's pretty good. But they really want to replace Heroku as your one-stop shop for all app needs. Static sites, web apps, DBs, Redis, cron jobs, all of it. It's clearly aimed to replace Heroku as the app hosting multi-tool, and they have a free tier to put their money where their mouth is too. And it's relatively significant free tier. It'll get your Rails app up and running, so that's something. It's not inconsequential. So, which one do I choose? There is an answer, and it might surprise you. How many of y'all walked in here not thinking it was going to be, oh, it depends, or anything like that? No? No, we're going to start some fights. I'm kidding. It all depends. It all depends. That was a misdirect. Obviously, that's why you're here, so you can learn about the platforms and figure out how to make that decision yourself. So, we're going to talk a little bit about what you can do and how we use it at Headway to kind of make the decisions on which platform we're going to use. So why not choose one? Why not choose one and stick with it? There's nothing wrong with that. Depending on your clients, your customers, and your team, that might be the best option for you. Stability is paramount when it comes to delivering good products to our customers and to our clients. So if there's one that you feel most comfortable with, just go with it. But you may have to choose now or in the future which one, if you need to switch, if you need to stick with one, or if you need to diversify. So we want to talk about how we at Headway are making those decisions. So we have a couple of criteria that we consider when deciding which platform we're going to use for a new client, or if we're going to migrate an existing client to a new host. We look at the knowledge cost or the experience our team has with the platform, the technical cost or how we need to spend our client's time and budget to get the project deployed to it, and then the cost, which is pretty self-explanatory, but we'll dig into it a little bit more here in a second. So with the knowledge cost, how much experience do we have with this platform for this type of build? We have at Headway, we're not just a Rails shop, we also do Phoenix apps, we do React Native and React Web, and sometimes whatever our client needs in that particular moment. We're very polyglot. So is X platform the best solution for this project? Have we ever deployed a Phoenix app to render before? And sometimes the answer is no. But that's one of the considerations that we take into account. And then is that knowledge localized? Have we shared that within the team? How easy is it for someone else on the team to step in if the current developers win the lottery? Or win the next money laundering operation known as NFTs? Are there tricks and pitfalls we've learned along the way that we've learned the hard way that aren't documented somewhere that could trip us up for someone else coming onto the project? Or when we turn it over to the client themselves. Sometimes they're going to maintain it. We need to make sure that it's not something that's going to be obtuse to them. And then is this knowledge easily transferable? How much DevOps and infrastructure knowledge do you need to know to get up to speed on it? Is it something where it's just git push and you're done? Is it something where you're going to have to every time run half a dozen CLI commands just to get into the console to deploy it? How hard is it to get to Rails console? Sometimes that's a determining factor. If it's a pain in the butt to get to Rails console, I'm not going to think about it twice, but I'm lazy. Technical costs. This includes both the budget for the project itself and the trust in the team to complete the objectives we're setting. Those are both finite resources for our client, and we need to make sure that we're being good stewards of those resources with this decision. Or we may be letting our predisposition to tinker with new things run wild a little bit. We need to be very clear about that with ourselves and with our clients. And if an update needs to be made, such as upgrading Postgres or Ruby versions, how much work is involved in that? Is it easy enough for the client to do, or do they have to find time with us or someone else to do it? This also takes into account the expertise of their team as well. A lot of times, they've got a single developer or a single head of technology, which is someone who is basically focused on making sure their emails go out and their social media doesn't break. So how easy is it for them to do these things? And then a big one, if the product is put on Product Hunt, how hard is it to stay ahead of 502 errors? Does it scale? How easily? And if it doesn't, is it our fault or is it the platform's fault? Let's be real. Who here hasn't written some code that causes some 502s when people try to use the app? And if you haven't, I want to talk to you. And then there's the money cost. Let's be real. This is one you definitely need to discuss with the client, but only after you've discussed the other two costs internally. Because monthly costs are a concrete number that the client can see and impacts their burn rate. So if your previous explorations lead to not using the cheapest option, make sure you have your reasons on why you go with that. Make sure you have them ready to go so you can lay out what the trade-offs are. Like this is the one that's easiestly accessible by clients. All they see is the dollar signs in a lot of times. But you need to tell them, yeah, you can spend $5 a month on this particular platform, but it's going to take you 20 man hours to us to get things changed. So these are all the things to consider when kind of working with your clients and trying to define the best solution. Because that's the other thing. This is not a decision you really should make by yourself. You need to talk to your clients or your customers about it. Otherwise, you're probably going to end up going with the one that you want and not necessarily the one that best serves them. So, we've given you some tools. We've taken you to the dance-off. And now we're going to give you some additional tools to help plan your journey. You know you best. You know your capabilities. You know your team's capabilities. You know the clients that you're working with. If you're a small technical co-founder or the person put in charge of maintaining the infrastructure on a small team, first of all, I see you and I love you. But you know what the smart moves are for your resources. Trust your gut and be willing to reach out for help, even if you're working on a client project. The number of times that we've run into something where we just need to hit Chris up on Discord or hop into the community forum on Fly, we immediately get answers or pointed in the right direction. So you don't have to know everything. It's all just about being willing to ask for help and reach out for it. And all three platforms I touched on today have very active presences on Discord and Reddit and their community boards. So you're likely not the first person to run into a roadblock you're experiencing, and help is just a question away. But we'll have some tools for you. I'm going to post these slides in the Slack channel, and you'll be able to see all my silly speaker notes as well. You can either laugh or make fun of me. I don't care. This talk is actually born out of a blog post that I'm writing about an in-depth comparison between these three platforms and Heroku, which actually is getting longer by the day because I think we're going to add MRSK in there, and we'll see what else happens next week. But with that blog post, we're also going to have a Notion checklist, a public Notion checklist, that you can use to duplicate and kind of make your own. We have one internally that we use to kind of gut check ourselves as we're spinning up a new client project and making the decision on which host we're going to use. And as always, I've broken a lot of things, both hearts and software. But feel free to reach out to me for mistakes that I've made, and maybe I can help you not make those. So yeah, we've got some time for questions. You can ask them to Arthur Pendragon, my dog here, or me directly, but my email's on there. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. Yes, very good question. So the question was, do you get managed databases on Fly like you do on Heroku? The answer is no. They just rolled out, I think in this past week or so, Postgres clusters on Fly, but those are still unmanaged. In fact, one of the apps that we have on Fly actually still uses the Heroku managed databases. Because that's one of the things they recommend. They recommend RDS or Heroku, which adds more complexity. But it's a solution. It works really well. Yeah. Yeah. No. And to make that point more clear, a lot of the clients that we support are still on Heroku. They were paid Heroku plans before, they're paid Heroku plans now. I don't know what it is about Heroku discontinuing the free tier, but at least for me, it just kind of shocked my brain like, oh, are these guys, what are these guys doing? So part of that is for so long having Rails Girls, Rails Bridge, Intro to Rails classes, being able to just set up free Heroku accounts and looking for alternatives for that. But as far as Heroku goes, nothing has really changed. Like you're still paying, like they haven't raised prices. It's almost like a psychological thing. Like if they don't have a free tier anymore, in my opinion, to be clear, it's almost like they're not reinvesting in the community anymore. And Fly and Render really want to do that. Not yet. Not for that reason specifically. The question was, have we moved clients over for the on-demand scaling geographically, right? Yeah, we haven't moved anyone over there for that yet. One of the clients we have moved over to Fly because there is the potential there as they grow to need very specific geographical distribution. But that particular part hasn't factored into our decision making as of like, this is a need right now. It's a very good question. Do we try to factor in our clients' comfort and expertise with managed DB versus unmanaged DBs into the equation? And yes and no, like not specifically. A lot of our clients don't have a lot of technical in-house support. The ones that we're looking at for Hatchbox, Fly, Render. So we kind of take that as a holistic thing. If they take a little while to change their DNS settings to reflect an app that we've put up somewhere, we kind of take that as an indicator. Okay, we probably just need to set them up on a managed DB somewhere because they're not going to have the time or bandwidth to really manage this DB themselves. All right, so Daniel, who is a former coworker, challenged me if I'm going to do another Intro to Rails class just by myself, no client, no one's paying for it, which platform am I going to use? As of today, I'm going to say Render. They have the most expansive free option, and you can give them a standard render.yaml to get their app online from GitHub. I think right now that is probably the closest analog to what Heroku was in terms of just git remote add, git push. And I think for an Intro to Rails class, that's probably as far as we would go. So the question is, if I were to put an app on Render just to get it out there, would I bother Dockerizing it first or just do like with Heroku and just send it up the pipe? Again, I'm kind of a lazy developer. I'd probably just send it up the pipe. In thinking about it, I probably would set up a Docker file with the render.yaml file so that if I'm distributing it to other folks to use as like an example, I'd probably set up a Docker file for that, yeah. Depends on how many times I'm gonna do it, right? If you do it once, okay, fine. If you do it twice, maybe I should automate this. And there was a question over here, yeah. With Render and Hatchbox, both of those are automatically deployed through GitHub or webhooks of some sort. So a lot of that user management falls back on you and typically follow the repo. Like you're probably going to set up your Render and Hatchbox deploys on a protected branch where there's only a certain number of people who can push to that branch or merge in. Fly, as of the last time I used it a couple weeks ago, it's a CLI command. So I think, I want to say everyone still has like push access or deploy access if you're not also using GitHub Actions to deploy it. So I don't know. I honestly couldn't tell you where Fly is at with that. I do know that they also have a GitHub action for deploying the Fly. which helps restrict some of that, so you don't have folks just cowboy coding and deploying like I've done. I think a lot of them rely on the repo permissions for some of that. The question was, and I'll just open this up to the room, what are the leading indicators for a technical team to move from a managed database to an unmanaged database? And honestly, I feel like that's on an it depends case by case basis. But I am open to other answers.
I would say you have a dedicated ops team.
That's a very good answer. That's the answer. I do see other hand. Yeah. All right, so we've got two good answers. Dedicated ops team, unsupported extensions. Do we have a third one? Colin, were you raising your hand? Backup, yeah. That's a very, yeah. Yeah, you should definitely not move to unmanaged until you know that you can back up your data. Is that good? Yeah. All right, excellent. Are there any features or functionality from Heroku that I feel are missing from any of these platforms? I don't know what that was, but probably. I didn't hear what they said. I would say ease of integrations. Like that's one of the things that Heroku does really well is you can just add free tiers of a bunch of different services without having to update your Docker file or go into the server and add the packages yourself. But even that, I think, is coming to connection pretty quickly. I know Hatchbox has made some upgrades. Fly has made some upgrades recently to where it's just adding a couple of lines to your Docker file and it's ready to go. Yeah. Anyone else? No? All right, well, thanks for listening.